to be a product of his father's design and fully steps into his role as the sole master of his own destiny, setting up his legendary solo peak on the Bad World Tour. The absolute emotional core and most engaging climax of the 2026 Michael biopic isn't just the flashy moonwalk, it's the intense, cathartic moment at the final show of the 1984 Victory Tour where Michael finally breaks free from his domineering father, Joseph Jackson. Subscribe as you listen to this. The air inside Dodger Stadium is thick with anticipation. On stage, Michael is delivering an electrifying, sweat-drenched performance of human nature and working day and night, matching his nephew Jaffer Jackson's uncanny choreography with a raw, emotional desperation. Offstage, the tension has reached a boiling point. For years, Michael has been trapped under the financial and emotional thumb of his father, Joseph, played with terrifying intensity by Colman Domingo. This tour was forced upon Michael, but as the music swells, you can see in his eyes that he is no longer the frightened little boy from Gary, Indiana. He is preparing to stage his own revolution. Then comes the moment that left theater audiences dead silent. Standing under the blinding stadium spotlights, drenched in sweat, Michael holds the microphone. Joseph is watching from the wings, fully expecting to rake in millions more from his son's labor. Instead, Michael looks out at the ocean of fans and makes a shocking, unscripted announcement. This is the final time the Jacksons will ever perform together. The camera cuts back and forth between Michael's resolute face and Joseph's expression rapidly morphing from smug satisfaction to absolute panic. With a single sentence, Michael publicly severs his ties with his father, stripping Joseph of his power forever. The troupe fully steps into his role as the sole master of his own destiny, setting up his legendary solo peak on the absolute emotional core and most engaging climax of the 2026 biopic isn't just the flashy moonwalk, it's the intense, cathartic moment at the final show of the 1984 Victory Tour where Michael finally breaks free from his domineering father, Joseph Jackson. Subscribe as you listen to this. The air inside Dodger Stadium is thick with anticipation. On stage, Michael is delivering an electrifying, sweat-drenched performance of human nature and working day and night, matching his nephew Jaffer Jackson's uncanny choreography with a raw, emotional desperation. Offstage, the tension has reached the boiling point. For years, Michael has been trapped under the financial and emotional thumb of his father, Joseph, played with terrifying intensity by Colman Domingo. This tour was forced upon Michael, but Indiana at this time. Without even granting his father the dignity of a climax, Michael forcefully pushes Joseph aside and keeps walking, flanked by his trusted bodyguard Bill Ray. It is an incredibly satisfying, liberating moment of triumph, the definitive turning point where Michael Jackson to be a product of his father's design and fully steps into his role as the sole master of his own destiny, setting his legendary solo on the World Tour. The absolute emotional core and most engaging climax of the 2026 Michael biopic isn't just the flash moonwalk. The silence inside the submarine is broken only by the groaning of aged metal resisting the immense depths. As Simon, Mark Fishbach, coordinates his coordinates on the map, a rhythmic, wet patter begins to echo through the hull. Coagulated blood and thick, red fluid begins to slowly leak from the overhead rivet, staining the gray metal walls. The realization that the structure is giving out sets in completely. Every drop that hits the floor emphasizes just how fragile the iron lung really is, and how far he is from the surface world that no longer exists. The creature attacks, and the illusion of safety vanishes instantly. The submarine is thrown violently to the side, alarms screaming in a deafening, red strobe light. The pressure hull splits, and torrents of hot, pressurized blood begin filling the cabin, forcing Simon onto his back as he struggles to hit the final node beacon. The water level rises to his chin, mixing with the sweat and absolute panic on his face. The film masterfully builds to its breathless finish here, trapping the audience inside the flooding, metallic coffin alongside him as the massive maw outside prepares for the final strike. With the forward viewport entirely encased in steel, Simon is completely dependent on sound cues, basic instruments, and a primitive camera that requires a few seconds to process each image. The audience shares his absolute blindness. The proximity sensor starts pinging with erratic speed, indicating something massive is moving just outside the hull. Simon flips the switch to take a snapshot into the dark void. The flash triggers, and when the grain of the print finally materializes on the monitor, it reveals a massive, ribbed skeletal structure and an eye larger than the submarine itself staring directly back. The tension reaches a boiling point as the farm goes completely silent. Chris Hendricks, Radha Mitchell, and her reunited crew have spent the last few minutes quietly slipping into their hidden vantage points, perched on top of corrugated iron roofs, nestled inside rusting tractors, and masked by sparse brush. The camera cuts back and forth between the scopes of the defenders and the heavily armed mercenaries sent by the ruthless warlord, Tim Roth. Every rustle of wine through the drygrass feels incredibly loud. You can practically feel the sweat breaking on the characters' faces as they wait for the inevitably messy first shot to break the silence. Deafening crack of a rifle drops him instantly. From there, the sequence turns into an incredibly intense, tactical puzzle. Unlike typical action movies with mindless automatic gunfire, every shot here is deliberate, sudden, and devastating. The camera tracks the trajectory of the bullets, showing how the squad coordinates through earpieces and hand signals to pin down the intruders. The geography of the farm is utilized perfectly. A mercenary tries to take cover behind a wooden shed, only for a bullet to punch cleanly through the timber from an angle he never anticipated. The battle narrows down to its personal core as the remaining mercenaries fall, forcing the warlord himself into the open to flush out Chris. This segment changes the pace entirely, trading the distant long-range visual style for a claustrophobic, terrifying game of hide-and-seek around the main ranch house. Tim Roth plays the villain with a chilling, calculated malice, taunting Chris about her past while trying to locate her daughter, Anya. The emotional stakes spike here as Chris has to balance her instincts as a